got it. Lovely. Thank you very much for that introduction, Katharina. And I will try and get round to some of your questions and points that you've raised as we go. And if I don't, please do feel free to remind me. I'm very happy to be prompted. And if there are things that I'm missing in the chat, anyone just shout out. I mean, yes. Let's make this as interactive as we can. So what do I do? How do I get to do it? I guess is the initial conversation. I'm just back this evening from working with a group of Austrian bankers at Ashridge Business School. That's what I was doing all morning this morning, and it's a leadership development program. Yesterday I was teaching students, MBA students at London Business School. That's in the context of an interpersonal dynamics elective that they can undertake if they want to. So we're sort of working on mindfulness for interpersonal dynamics. I've got various other things coming up this week. I'll be working with for London Business School with the leaders in an automotive company, car company. And the next day I'll be doing something for people in a consultancy somewhere. So there's stuff has started up again, and I've had my first 2 unmasked classes live, face to face. It was a joy and a delight, and maybe I'll have COVID tomorrow, but because all my friends seem to have it or have had it, I feel very left out. And we'll see how that goes. But I must say, teaching face to face was wonderful. You know, the feeling of having people to respond to, live people to respond to, people whose eyes you could see, people whose small gestures you could interpret. It really made such a lovely difference. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that. I'll just say, you know, like in the last couple of, Katharina sort of asked whether there's that image that I use about, you know, the mind being like an ocean-going liner that we use for chugging around the harbour if we don't learn to work with it. That's a good one. I'd forgotten that. I might come back to that. But what I've been talking about much more recently, and this seems to be landing quite well, is an idea that I've taken from Ian McGilchrist. I don't know if people are familiar with the work of Ian McGilchrist, the master and his emissary. Could we have a sort of thumbs up in the you know, that emoji thumbs up thing, reaction in the bottom, just to see how many people are familiar with what we're talking about here. The master and his emissary. Not that many. Okay, lovely. I'll tell you the story because I think it's really, really pertinent to our work. So McGilchrist is an awesomely learned person. Awesomely learned. Has been a fellow of All Saints College at Oxford, which is, you know, massively high academic accolade. He's been a psychiatrist, taught English literature. He's a philosopher. He's a neuroscientist. Many, many things, and very, very widely learned. And he begins his book with a story, a fable. And here's the fable, which I think is hugely pertinent to the work we do. The fable is that there was once an accomplished spiritual master who ruled a small kingdom. And the people in the kingdom flourished and were happy. But gradually the kingdom began to expand and grow. It developed. And the master realized that he did not himself have the resources adequately to administer all the parts of his growing domain. So he appointed a few emissaries to go out and administer things on his behalf. And one of these emissaries was out there doing stuff really well, doing a good job at what he was doing. And he started to think, you know what? I'm really, really good at this. In fact, I'm probably better in many ways than the master is at doing this stuff. And he started to use the master's regalia as if it was his own. And in time, he came back to the kingdom and he imprisoned the master and began to rule in his stead. And the kingdom fell into disrepair and collapsed. So the story here goes that the master in this case stands for many of the parts of our experience, the parts of our mind, which come from the right hemisphere of our brains. Present moment experience, the feeling of love, the feeling of well-being, feelings associated with generosity, connection, into, a sense of being present, direct sense experience. All of these parts of our mind live there. The left hemisphere, McGilchrist tells us, is associated with conceptualization, with thinking, planning, analyzing, moving forward into the future, moving backwards into the past. All this kind of activity. Now, we need both for a healthy human life. We need a sense of what's happening right now. How am I? What am I feeling? What's going on around me? An ability to read the present situation. And we need an ability to analyze, think, plan, imagine, move forward and backwards in time. We need both. But what's happened since industrialization is that the emissary, the left hemisphere, has made a land grab and in fact has taken over the whole show. Our capacity for analyzing, thinking, conceptualizing, that's now taken over our minds in the developed world especially. It's as if that part of our mind is the only part of our mind that many of us experience. Just constant thinking, planning, being anxious, remembering, figuring, wondering, thinking more, getting involved in tech, checking the news, checking our email, checking social media feeds, thinking about, have we got all our ducks in a row? Is everything ready? Will I be okay? Planning. And it's out of control. The activity of the left hemisphere now way predominates in our culture. And for many people, they don't get a break from it. They just don't get a break. They don't get the opportunity simply to be here now, resting in the present moment, appreciating what's going on around them, appreciating and enjoying their current experience. So there's been a land grab on the part of the left hemisphere, and it's been successful. But it's really undermining our well-being, undermining our happiness. We know all this stuff. So the thing that I'm talking to people about now is to begin to give some attention to the activity of the right hemisphere. Just begin to learn to give some attention to that. Cultivate your capacity, your innate capacity, to be with that part of your experiencing, because that's the part of experiencing that matters to you as it happens. That's why you're doing what you're doing. You're doing it in quest of feelings of well-being. You're doing it in order to help to feed the people you love. You're doing it in order to have the kind of life which feels connected with others, which feels adequate, which feels contented, which feels real. And the left hemisphere isn't going to, in and of itself, deliver that stuff. So you need to just move your attention from time to time to this very natural, easy, and present part of your experiencing, which is delivered by the right hemisphere. Follow your breath. Pay attention in a body scan. Notice that. Notice your capacity to make that switch. So that's what I'm talking about a lot these days, is that we can notice when this tendency to conceptualization, planning, being anxious, thinking, has taken over. When we notice it, we have a moment of meta-awareness. We see what's going on. Right, I'm thinking. I didn't mean to be thinking. I meant to be something else. Whatever it is, it might be meditating, it might be following the breath, it might be the body scan, it might be walking in the woods, it might be giving attention to my children, it might be eating this meal, it might be anything. Notice it and choose. Just make a choice. Give some time to paying attention to the activity of the right hemisphere. Just give some time to paying attention to another part of your experiencing. And in this way, we can begin to rebalance our minds so that we live a more rounded human life, which is vital, I tell people, in organizations, if we're actually, as leaders, because I mainly work with leaders, to communicate adequately with other people. You can't have an adequate communication with other people if it's only informed by the activity of the left hemisphere. It's not just a conceptual matter. It's a felt sense matter, an adequate communication. People need to feel felt. They need to feel that we've connected with them. They need to feel that we know what it's like to be them. So that can only be experienced and expressed through paying attention to the activity of the right hemisphere. So in this and various other ways, I'm finding that a really, really useful model to communicate some of what we want to do in our mindfulness work. Yeah. And any thoughts on any of that before we move forward?
There is a question by Claire Griffin in the chat.
Yeah, I'll come to that because I feel that immediately throws us into a left hemisphere question, if you like.
Let's wait and maybe just have a pause to.
Sandra, which organizations would you say are balanced in the two? Any role models? No way. No organizations that I know of. Or maybe some of the small consultancies that I work with are human. But, you know, larger organizations, when they reach a certain scale, they become inhumane. It's very, very hard for an organization to be humane. I don't know how you make a genuinely humane organization beyond a certain scale. You know, even academic institutions, universities, those of us who work in universities here will know how strangely inhumane an environment they can be. Organizations have their own agendas. The agenda of the organization, which is not the agenda of the people in the organization. They're separate. The agenda in the organization is not the same as the agenda of the people in the organization. So I don't know any scaled organizations that are genuinely humane. I don't know any. Even the great charities, you know, I hear horror stories from the great charities, from charities that I admire, NGOs that I admire enormously. I won't name any names, but you know, the good ones that we all want to give money to. I mean, you know, some of the people working in them will tell you horror stories. It's just the nature of organizations to behave in ways that serve the interest of the organization in the end. Yeah.
Dear colleagues, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, because we really like to hear your voice.
Yeah, please. Karen, hiya.
Thanks, Michael. I'm just wondering if, you know, it was my colleague Sandra who actually asked that question. We both work in the NHS. That's quite interesting. And I just wonder, although, you know, and the NHS is like a massive kind of lumbering institution, for want of a better word, but I just wonder if you feel that individual leaders or, you know, within the organization are able to kind of create that type of culture.
I don't know about the culture, but I do know that there are fabulous leaders in the NHS. I don't know about NHS organizational cultures because I've not done a lot of work in the NHS.
Right.
But and I know that there are people doing absolutely fabulous work there. I mean, the whole institution is both, you know, a crumbling behemoth and the most marvelous thing that's ever been created in the United Kingdom. So at one at the same time, it's a very strange beast, our National Health Service, and it's the third largest employer in the world. It's how on earth do you manage to set a culture for anything that big? It's, you know, works under enormous pressure. It's fragmented and massively valued and under-resourced.
Yeah,
it's a very, very strange beast. And my colleague Megan Rates does a huge amount of work in the NHS, especially around speaking up and speaking truth to power, and trying to encourage people to, you know, speak up, because there've been terrible cases around whistleblowers in the NHS that many of us have heard about. And you know, Megan tears her hair out, as everyone does, who tries to engage in working in the NHS culture. I think.
May I come here?
I beg your pardon?
May I come?
Please do. Please do. Is it Michelle?
It's Michelle. Yes, I work for the NHS, and we've just started a project about 2 months ago, and to build on what you're saying, is that we are now offering programs. We are not mindfulness-based, but we're really looking at stress reduction and building resilience.
Yes.
And we're also working for parents.
Yes.
So we try to find side ways, and we've now got some business with the North and Manchester units. And it's very interesting because there's very few people coming to our workshops, not more than 10.
Yes.
But more and more people are now engaged, and the managers are coming in.
Yes.
So it's really under the umbrella of well-being and not mindfulness.
Yes.
And it seems that it's an interest. So just for everybody here, we introduce mindfulness just a sideway and a segue. And yet what I find is that even though the culture is not really there yet, there are many people within the organization, and we work for people like Deloitte as well, the same with the same view. So we are not directly engaging in mindfulness. We're looking at really what the needs are, and it seems that one topic is well-being, generally speaking, and within that, stress reduction and resilience building. I don't know if that's just a comment, but I think it's useful to see that's actually picking up, and our business within NHS is growing because of that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Rennie.
Hi, Michael. Good to meet you. I have a certain tension for me around the secularization, because although we know that mindfulness, well, contemplative practice is present across the entire world and throughout history in all sorts of traditions, including in religious traditions, there's no doubt about it that mindfulness definitely has its root within those contemplative traditions. And therefore, I sometimes struggle with presenting something as being secular, with a hand on my heart, secular, when I know that I'm standing on the shoulders of many, many people in many particularly contemplative religious traditions.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Rennie. I mean, I understand, I think, what you're saying. I have a long history in Buddhist practice myself. I'm trying to really understand this from my own side. I keep revisiting these issues over and over and over again. And I'm currently writing a book with a psychologist friend who, I won't mention his name, but many of you will know his work. And we're doing a book on the psychology of awakening. And awakening is, thought of and taught in many, many different religious traditions. There are different ways in which it's configured, different ways in which it's spoken of. And what I've come to realize is that all we're talking about here are natural processes of the mind. Natural processes of the mind. Under certain conditions, the mind, as it were, expresses itself or configures itself in certain ways that we would recognize as awakened. Awakened, by which I mean present, compassionate, non-grasping, aware of interdependence, very low ego states, and so on. A very translucent sense of selfhood, and so on and so on and so on. So I won't go into the components of awakening right now, but they're along those lines. And my feeling increasingly is that this is just the way the mind works under certain conditions. And different religions at different times have tried to bring that kind of state about and to express that state in ways that made sense to them in their time and place. So the Buddha came upon a particular mode of experiencing. He taught that way of experiencing to help others to come into that way of experiencing. And over time, fairly quickly actually, a religion grew up around that. These days, from my own perspective, I think we can communicate those understandings without needing to reference anything religious. We're just talking about the mind and the way the mind works. This is how the mind works. Under these conditions, these kinds of experiences may emerge. Under certain conditions, different experiences may turn up. So that's not supernatural. For me, that's natural. It's just a natural process, and as a natural process, it must be susceptible to psychological inquiry and psychological insight. It's a natural process. That's what psychology is a study of the mind. So we could look at the mind, come to our understanding using psychological methods and tools from psychological science, and try to understand what's going on there, how you bring such states about, what it means. So for me, that's not, as it were, a secularization. It's just an investigation. And you while not in any way demeaning religious language or religious experience, you're just saying, well, this is natural. This is how the mind works. So this is what we do. So, for example, we could say that if you repeatedly bring your attention gently and kindly back to the breath, you're likely to begin to experience changes in your experience. You do that over a couple of months. We know from considerable research that people who engage in that sort of procedures a bit like that and various other procedures, experience certain quantifiable benefits. We know that's just what happens. You engage in these methodologies over time and benefits accrue. And that's available to us to investigate by way of psychological science. What are the processes involved? What do we think's happening there? What's changing? Why is it changing? So that's not, I think, a secularization. It's rather just an investigation into what actually happens. So I don't know if that makes any sense to you, Renia.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's probably the best description that I've heard to date after 30 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have
Thank
a
you.
hand raised from Stefan. Stefan now, please.
Hello, good evening, and good evening, Katharina. Thank you for welcoming us. And hi, Michael. I've just a comment and a question. The comment is what you describe is, for me, a new way to consider the way to present mindfulness in companies. Very often I'll try to convince my the person in front of me to say, yeah, okay, listen to the daily benefits you can have and so on. This does not work a lot. And one reason it doesn't work, and this is my question, is about, very often I have the comment, yes, mindfulness, yes, I understand. So it stays on the thought part and the cognitive part. And just after, say, okay, so how will I know this is working? Do you have a KPI to give me so I can figure out the investment and the expense I will give will be really profitable for the company and for the people? And then the answer I make is there is no KPI, just try, do, and see. And on a rational point of view, this doesn't work at all. And so the question is, how can we avoid in French we say instrumentalisation. It means that we buy some mindfulness to achieve a goal, and then, for instance, for reducing stress or for increasing performance, and so on. Yes, I'm okay if it increases performance. And so I'm struggling with that, because the practice is not about performance, it's not about achieving something. And in front of me, I have someone who says, okay, I can do it, I believe in it, if it can achieve something. So I don't know how to answer that.
I really feel for you in that struggle, Stefan. I mean, I really get it, and I've had that for a long time, and I don't go there anymore. I just don't engage in those conversations. I think we're in tremendous danger of selling this, whole approach down the river, kind of cheapening it, using it as a well-being intervention sometimes, or using it as a way of just helping people just reduce stress. I don't think it's about that at all. I really don't. It's about life. It's about actually enabling people to have a full and meaningful life, a fuller, more meaningful life. And that may come along with increased performance, that may come along with reduced stress, it may come along with all sorts of things, but really, I'm very, very reluctant to go in and make a sale, as it were, on the basis of what I think of increasingly as left hemisphere activity. I think it just misses the point. You can't deliver on it. What you can deliver on is something much richer.
Mm.
Yeah, and what I'm fortunate in as much as the business schools kind of do the selling for me, so I don't actually get involved in many of these sales conversations. You know, I just turn up and do what I'm asked to do, kind of thing. But I've stopped trying to persuade people to be more mindful on the basis that it will, you know, help them to meet their KPIs, key performance indicators for those who don't know the language. It just doesn't feel helpful to me. It may or may not do that, but much more importantly, it can help people to have, you know, a richer human life. And that's what organizations above all need for their people. Good Lord, you know, it's been awful the last few years for people working in organizations. We need to have more humane and more human lives. The organizations themselves can't and won't deliver it, but interventions such as we're able to deliver can help. And, you know, we need to keep, I think, our eye on what it is we can actually do, what we're actually about, what our values actually are. We're mindfulness teachers not because we're interested in helping people meet their KPIs, I imagine. I don't imagine anyone got involved in mindfulness training because they were interested in helping people meet their fourth quarter KPIs. I mean, really? No. There's something else that drew us into this practice. And I think as much as possible, we want to speak from that more authentic place. Mm-hmm. And speak to participants from that more authentic place.
Yeah, I agree. Really, I agree. And I just wrote a book about mindfulness in companies in French. It's in libraries now, just 15 days ago. And I'm talking about that because I want to expand this point of view of the practice, which is about life and about love.
Yes.
And this is really interesting because this afternoon I went to a workshop. I just led a workshop in a company. There were some HR people of the group, representative of HR function in the group. And when I talked about love, and I proposed a practice about love, about self-compassion and love, and some of the people after in the sharings just said, yes, but the company is not there for helping people to love each other.
Yeah.
And that was very interesting. I was not disappointed, but because I know that it's just seeds I sow and it's okay.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's quite difficult, really.
Yeah. The company isn't there for that purpose. The company isn't there to help people love each other for sure. But if people in the organization have more authentic and richer relationships with one another, then they will perform better, then performance will go up, then retention will increase, then so many other benefits will accrue. But you can't do it for the benefits. You do it for the sake of rich communication.
Yeah, that's right. And performance is the effect. It's not the purpose.
Exactly. It's not the goal.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. We have Karen, you wanted to share something. Would you please?
Yeah, thank you. Michael, I'm really interested in how, and I don't know what your experience is of this, how to keep it going within an organization. So within the I'm a physiotherapist in Glasgow, and we've been really fortunate in being very supported by our manager over many years. So probably about 6 or 7 years ago, we were able to deliver 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction courses in working hours to any staff or any of our staff who wanted to attend them. And we had probably a real flurry of interest for about 4 years. And we're then able to do kind of taster sessions ongoing and drop in meditation sessions during working hours. And what I've noticed is there's a sort of tailing off of interest. And so I guess I partly came to this session tonight to be re-energized, maybe to get some new ideas. And I don't want to be the mindfulness bore, which I feel there's a slight danger that I'm becoming that person. So, and I totally agree with you. It's not about KPIs, but it is about, you know, caring for the carers. So physiotherapists and anybody who's working, I'm sure there's a whole range of professions represented here. You know, if your tank is empty, there's not much to give. And especially over the past couple of years, it's been massively stressful for people working in the kind of caring professions, not being able to deliver care in the normal way. So I feel that, I don't know, it feels almost like the interest is really waning, and I'm just not quite sure whether, you know, how to not reframe exactly, but yeah, I suppose I'm just looking for ideas and maybe your experience of where it has been. I mean, we've been very, very lucky in being very supported with time, within working time, to actually do this.
Yeah, I don't have a great deal of wisdom to offer there, Karen, except to say that I completely get the concern that you don't want to become a mindfulness bore. I completely understand that. And, you know, for those of us who teach, it's easy to fall into our scripts, and we've just got them off so fluently. The set of things that we say, the things that we do, we completely inhabit them, and they're easy and painless to do. So we just easily slot in, and the danger, of course, is that we start teaching on automatic pilot. So I think there's something to be said for really mixing it up and finding new ways of doing things, new ways of talking, new ways of running groups, throw it open to the group, get the group to do it differently, just keep mixing it up, because there is a real danger that we just repeat, and then people just think, oh, there's nothing, no real reason to engage with this. Yes, I'm afraid I don't speak French, so I can't engage with some of the French conversation that's happening off on the side there. Let me see what else is. That's Karen's question about 8-week MBSR courses. And Sandra wanted to know which organizations would you say are balanced. We've looked at that. There was someone with a question about, right near the top of the chat. That was Claire's question. The 3 most common problems that businesses I've worked with recently are hoping to solve. I don't know. I don't know what they're hoping to solve. I really don't know. I often don't know why I'm there. I'm just taking an opportunity to work with the people in front of me. And I'm kind of reluctant, I think you'll have picked this up by now, I'm kind of reluctant to go in there with the intention of solving any problem. More an intention to kind of open an exploration for people to begin to discover new ways of experiencing. But you know, the part of the issue may be that mindfulness, as it's being taught in the context that we're discussing it here, comes from a clinical context, you know, from MBSR, MBCT, ACT, however you want to frame it, probably MBSR, MBCT, I'm imagining, in this group. And they're pretty damn specific about how they want to go about things. You know, they're targeted. In very particular MBCT, which has got a whole mindset of problem formulation, diagnosis, as it were, and address the issue, bring about an outcome. It is a way you can go about things, undoubtedly, and we know from the research that it's been extraordinarily fruitful. So, in a way, I can't argue with that particular approach. But when it comes into organizations, you start to switch into something a bit more monetary, a bit more measured, a bit more return on investment oriented, a bit more mechanistic, maybe. And the life can very quickly go out of it. So that's what I'm kind of resisting when it comes to organizational work. This idea that we're somehow going to deliver something which is going to increase our performance and make us better than our competitors. Although, for sure, I've spoken in the past about competitive advantage of mindfulness.
Other than the aspect of well-being, which very often blends into reducing stress, reducing days of sick leave, in order to increase performance, what I found very helpful is that the personal mindfulness practice would blend into a different way of interacting in a team, and that building up from those atomic bases, like the individual, then go to the team, then go to like a department, and ever wider circles. Many organizations are also looking for change in a way of innovation, bringing out more creativity, having more people participate, for example, in different forms of dialogue, but also the real big thing of organizational change, structural change, culture change. And in my work, I found that starting with the CEO and the management team, of being more attentive to their own experience and how they are in their culture and how they are connected to the values and the mission of the organization, makes them much more open to the values of their people. And then the conversation about the change processes is different. So that makes waves starting from the individual, but not stopping there.
Yeah.
Is that something that speaks to you, Michael?
That very much speaks to me. I completely get that, organizational culture change, but I don't think you get organizational culture change by teaching a few people to follow their breath. I think it's that's good for individuals. I really believe in it. Meditation is central to my approach, key to my life, but it's not enough if you're looking for organizational culture change. So I've been involved in OD programs, organizational development programs, culture change programs. I've worked with, for example, the top 350, I think it was, leaders in one of the big energy companies across Europe. We did that over several years, but it's with a team of people who are consistently working with the top 300 and something leaders in small groups, helping them to get into dialogue with each other. Yes, I did teach them meditation. Yes, I did encourage them to become more mindful and so on. But it came alongside a whole bunch of other stuff around communication, around leadership development, around ways of being, etc., etc., etc. There's a massive suite of interventions, as it were, that did then enable change to take place in that organization. I think it's substantially changed. But you don't get there just by teaching an 8-week meditation course. That's a completely different ballgame, that kind of organizational development intervention. It's richer and more complicated. Yeah. So
it can bring about the conversation, and it can bring about a different quality of listening. Yes. On the level where people meet each other most, to inform a different way of listening, to inform a more, to be less judgmental and wait for people who don't speak up, or be inviting towards them, not immediately hitting them with your own arguments. So yes, I completely agree. It doesn't bring the culture change, but it can be the seed for people to change and want to be involved in a different way of working together.
Yes, yeah, maybe, yeah. Thank you. Berit, your point.
Yeah, so I once got a feedback, which I think was the best feedback I ever got when after teaching a round of mindfulness MBSRs for an organization. And it was, thank you for bringing back kindness in the office. And I think that really pinpoints what my goal, I think, is for bringing it into organizations. And that brings it also together, the conversation you just had now, because I think, like Katarina, when you teach mindfulness and you do it to a significant portion of the employees, because it also depends on the size of the organization, of course, and how many take part in these courses and choose to do that. I do think that you are changing the organizational culture from within. And I think also this kind of also answers Karen's question earlier on about how to keep engagement up, because I think the more you get people engaged and the more that they see this as a way of doing good for themselves and their colleagues, the more they tend to keep engaged and keep at it, I think. So I do think, although I do agree, of course, there is more to an organizational change, but it is for sure making a change, I do believe.
Yes, certainly more mindful people in organizations will affect the organization for sure. It sort of puts me in mind of a lovely experience I had at an investment bank. I was working with some senior people in an investment bank they'd asked me to do an 8-week mindfulness training for them. So I came in, I was working with them, and I said, okay, so let's just sit upright and allow your eyes to close. And one of the women in the room said, Michael, you don't know what you're asking me to do. I said, okay, what? She said, I do not close my eyes in this place with these people. That was fabulous, just perfect. So, that enabled us to have a really rich conversation around, okay, so what's going on here? So we sort of put aside, let's do this meditation, and we got into what's happening and, what's giving rise to this particular experience. And they ended up as a group contracting to work together with each other to try to make their particular part of the organization a bit less toxic. So you can just if you're lucky, bring about those kinds of changes sometimes, yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Berit. Sandra, would you like to bring your question? Or
yes, thank you. I'm curious about what brings you into an organization then, Michael, because if you're doesn't sound that you've got a particular agenda or a kind of pitch, but what draws an organization to engage with you? So what is it that you are offering?
I don't know. I mean, my website sort of dropped off the planet. I mean, no one seems to be engaging with it these days. So I don't get, the sort of random approaches that I used to get to ask people out of the blue, to come and do some stuff for me, do some stuff for them. So I work in the business schools, which is fabulous, and because they do all the sales, and I do work with some ongoing clients that I've had for a long time, and that's really lovely, just ongoing work with clients who know what's on offer. And increasingly these days I'm working one-to-one with senior people, and that I find really, really satisfying. But the more general sort of mindfulness sales that I just haven't been doing for a bit, and I don't know what's behind that. I mean, there might be just people with better websites than me out there attracting those sorts of inquiries, or it might be there are fewer inquiries. I don't really know. I've got enough work, but I'm not getting the random inquiries I used to get. So I don't know what's driving this.
Would you say that you're more engaged as an executive coach then, rather than going in with a
Quite a bit.
mindfulness hat on?
I'm doing quite a bit more coaching, but it's everything that I do is explicitly from a mindfulness perspective. So the people who engage me as a coach know my background, and sometimes it's come about through the intention to learn about mindfulness. Sometimes it's come from other reasons. But mainly I'm doing leadership development, mindful leadership development, which is where my research lies and where some of my writing lies. And that's what really interests me. I do some regular drop-in sessions for one big global company, which I'm just love to bits, because you after a while you just get a steady stream of people who really kind of get it and really want nourishing and feeding on a regular basis, and I just have to keep enriching it, thinking about it, figuring out new approaches, new stuff to share, new ideas, or just come back to some of the old favorites. But I find that very, very satisfying, the feeling that there's people who know what's on offer, are coming for what's on offer, are really enjoying it, directly benefiting from it. I love that. But that's not a massive part of my work.
Landing into that last point, Michael, with those people who really, as you say, get it and want it, do you ever offer follow-up deepening? For example, I would typically offer them sessions out of work time, because most of the time I would offer it during office hours. But I have found that sometimes there are people who really want to engage and they want more, they want deepening, they maybe want a compassion training or something else. Do you then offer further participation in their own time or something like that?
No, I don't do that. I don't do that. No. It sounds like a lovely thing to do, but no, it's not. It's not what I do. I'm also kind of trying to keep time for writing and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, then maybe as an answer to Karen, I do that, and very often I find that these people turn into internal ambassadors, not because they speak about it, but because they start behaving differently and people notice. So that is something that when you say how to keep it going, to be content with a smaller group of people who really get into it. That's just my experience.
Yeah. It's very, very satisfying.
To have a small meditation, something that you would do and then we can collect our thoughts and our feelings and come back into this dialogue?
I'd like to do that. I'd also like to visit the bathroom. I'm a bit old, so I have to do that from time to time. So if people would forgive me, can we take a 5-minute break, a liquid adjustment break, to take some in, to take some out, and come back in 5 minutes' time? Is that okay?
Yeah, and maybe from that silence have a short guided meditation, or do we want to take those 5 minutes, whoever stays here, to be in silence? Whatever. Michael, you choose when you come back. Thank you.
More or less reassembled, those of us who want to be here. So why don't we do a little practice together for say 10 minutes, something like that, and see how we get on with it. And what I'll invite you to do, because we're kind of advanced practitioners on this call, which is kind of interesting. You know, yes, let me think. I'll tell you some stuff. And then we can do a little practice. I'm just back from, I'm a week now back, more or less, from a solitary retreat of 2 weeks up in the mountains in southern Spain. So just behind Benidorm, crazily enough, there's a place that I regularly go to, an area I go to, that this was a new particular venue for me. The exact venue was new, where a friend of mine offered me the use of a hut up there for 2 weeks, and he said he would look after me. He'd pick me up at the airport, take me up there, 700 meters up, bring food for the first week, food for the second week later, keep me stocked with firewood, leave me to my own devices, more or less. And I really jumped at the chance, because all the retreats I've tried to go on, face-to-face retreats, have been cancelled by COVID over the last couple of years. So this was my first opportunity to really get away on my own, do some serious practice. And so I went up there, and the first day was blue and magical and wonderful. I could see the Mediterranean glinting between two mountain peaks. And then for the rest of my time there, the rain came down, and it was torrential. Absolutely torrential. Mudslides, landslides, roads blocked. Crazy. That no one had ever seen rain up there to that extent in the last while. It was dramatic. But I had enough food, and I had enough firewood, and I had the opportunity just to be on my own in complete silence doing some practice. And I've been reading around this theme of awakening. And one of the things that I came upon was a writer who was talking about, well, awakening can happen at a mild, a medium, or an intense level. You know, you could be like the Buddha or someone like that and have a really intense awakening experience. Seems that, you know, there are people in the contemporary age having experiences like that. Eckhart Tolle seems to claim to have that kind of experience. It feels credible to me. Why not? Intense awakening experiences, but he also talks about milder awakening experiences or even medium awakening experiences. That's new to me, that idea. And I thought, gosh, yeah, why not think in those terms? So I thought, well, okay, I'll shoot for medium, I'll shoot for mild. Why not? I'll do that while I'm up here. And then I also thought, well, how shall I practice? And I've done lots and lots and lots of solitary retreats, but I thought, how am I going to use this time? And I realized one of the things I've been reading about was a common denominator, a meta-characteristic of awakening experiences, appears to be the reduction or even elimination of conceptual thinking and a sense of interdependence, of, you know, the interpenetration of self and other, and feeling connected with your environment and lower ego. So I thought, well, that's nice and simple. Let's just do that. So I put aside all the more complicated Buddhist stuff that I sometimes think about, and I thought, let's just do this really, really simply. We'll just shoot for calming the mind, eliminating thinking, and, you know, contemplating dependent arising. Nice and simple thing to do. Contemplating interpenetration, however you want to put it. So that's what I did. I meditated, started off, you know, simple, following the breath, just calming. And I'd alternate periods of, you know, calming meditations, reducing thinking meditations, with just sitting in a chair staring at the fire, just watching the fire. Nothing much going on, not doing anything, just sitting in a chair looking at the fire, and then back to my meditation seat, you know, more or less paying attention to the breath, but not in any big deal way, just calming. And it was really, really lovely, really lovely. And at one point I found myself just sitting in front of the fire, and you know how when a fire dies down, you sometimes you just get that little flicker of flame and then it's gone. You know, it's dying, it's dying, it's dying, then it goes, pip, and then it's gone. Yeah. So I was watching my mind, just sitting in the chair, watching the fire, watching my mind, and there's this little flicker which went, oh, no thoughts, bink, and then they were gone. That was it. So I was just sitting there, no thoughts, very contented, lovely, and feeling this sense of interdependence, interpenetration, connection with my environment. So my hands were touching the arm of my chair. That was just sensation. There wasn't a hand, a chair. It was just, you know, something happening there. Some sensation was present, some experience was there, but it didn't represent a hand, it didn't represent a chair. It was just experience. So if there were birds singing outside, they weren't birds singing outside. There was just a sort of continual flow between mind and environment, if you like. Lovely, lovely, lovely thing to do. And so I had a fab time up there, and I came away thinking, you know, this is a way that people can really, it's a simple way of practicing. It's no big deal. This is no big deal. Everyone can do this. It just takes, yes, I was hugely fortunate that I was up a mountain in an ongoing rainstorm with nothing bothering me. But it's possible to work with this stuff. It's all doable. It's all very, very doable. So what this is all about is just noticing the presence of conceptual thinking, of conceptualization, of left hemisphere activation, noticing the presence of it, and then just preferring, gently, 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 preferring to pay attention to right hemisphere activate, to right hemisphere experiencing. Pay attention to sensation, pay attention to the breath, pay attention to feeling, pay attention to present moment experiencing of one sort or another. So it's just noticing the activity of conceptualization, letting go of it and moving somewhere else. Noticing it, reintroducing itself, spotting it for what it is, gently moving the attention somewhere else. And it's a very, very, very gentle process. It's just very gently preferring another mode of experiencing. Because that mode of experiencing is alive for all of us all of the time. We just don't give it attention because conceptualization of one sort or another, thinking, remembering, planning, blah, 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 is pulling on us, pulling on us, pulling on us. And all we do is just gently go, nah, something else. I'll pay attention to something else. And it's just gentle, gentle, gentle. So why don't we do that? Because we're all experienced people. Just get more or less upright. You could let your eyes close or leave them open. And just arrive in this present moment. Right here, right now. And just notice what's up for you right now, whatever it is. What's present right now in your experiencing, in the field of your experience. Whatever it is, it just is what it is. And if you find that your attention is being hooked and taken up with thinking, planning, remembering, mind wandering, just noticing it at any time and very gently, super gently, just moving your attention to another part of your experiencing, a more present moment, simpler part of your experiencing, whatever you choose to do. You know best. And let's just engage in that for a bit, together. And if you've lost the plot, if you've found yourself caught up in thinking, planning, all that stuff, just noticing and gently moving somewhere else. And when you find yourself thinking and planning and imagining and all of that stuff, just noticing it. And just gently choosing, preferring, moving to another part of your experience. So just seeing, choosing, preferring, always gently, always kindly. Okay, lovely. So I'm sure we could keep on doing that for some time, but let's begin to draw it to a close. Just taking your time, there's no rush. And I'd be really, really, really interested just to hear what kind of, how that landed, what sort of experiences showed up. I mean, I'm not running this as an inquiry. I'm just really intrigued to know whether this approach can work in that kind of way, in this kind of medium. What sort of experiences showed up? Yeah, so Magdalena.
to share that whenever I do any kind of mindfulness practice, this, what you describe, at this tiny moment of going into this different kind of experience, is something that is, in my experience, core of mindfulness practice. But it is just, there were just tiny moments when I am just this, just sensation, let's say. And then I find myself in the story. And then I go back, and in this tiny moment, I'm again just this. And somehow I feel I can't do more.
No, I completely get that, of course. And I think one of the factors there is the conditions of our lives. You know, the conditions of our lives are such that we're called upon to be thinking, planning, getting on with stuff, to keep that conceptualizing part of our mind very alive and very active. And under those conditions, of course, you know, just the flywheel just keeps turning. And yes, we get some break from it, which is wonderful and refreshing, but then it just hooks in again. And I think that's not so much your capacity as a meditator, so much as the general mode of your life, I'm imagining. And that if you were to spend some time in retreat, you would find that the conditions supported a more consistent move away from the conceptualizing. That's my guess. Yeah. Does that make any kind of sense, Magdalena?
Yeah, I didn't have opportunity to go to a real retreat. I do some solo retreats, and but just to mention, in Croatian language there is a word predah, which means take a breath.
Yeah.
And I use this as a mindful moment while teaching others.
Yeah.
Just do this in a one little moment, and
yeah,
that's good.
Thank you. Yeah, lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Teresa in Portugal is asking, isn't this another way of explaining the doing and being modes of mind, narrative self versus experiential self? I think my intention is for it to be a little bit more than that. Because, you know, very often with the being mode of mind or the experiential self, very often there's still some degree of selfing going on. And my intention with this is to be a bit less selfing about it. But that's it's a question of trying to refine that language. Yeah, it's along those lines, undoubtedly, but I hope it goes a little further. I would like it to go a little further than narrative self or a doing mode of mind. I'd like it to go a little further. I'd like it to go further by certainly introducing ideas like interdependence, which I think can extend the experience into other domains. Claire.
Yes, hi, Michael. Yeah, the practice that you just guided, and you just, in response to Teresa's question, you just mentioned language. And what was very interesting for me in that practice is there was something about the phrase preferring rather than choosing.
Yeah.
It just felt just a little bit, felt a little bit softer. It was almost like there was a kind of a click.
Yes.
Rather than a kind of transferring of attention. Oh, well, I've got to go, I'm over here and I've got to come over here. There was something like distance there for me.
Yeah.
And it was really, really subtle.
Yeah. Nice
But
spot.
I
That's my intention.
yeah.
Nice spot.
Yeah,
Because the
definitely.
choosing is so instrumental sometimes. The choosing is again, to be crude about this, it feels to me sometimes as if the choosing can be left hemisphere activity. I choose, no, I would be a good meditator. I will choose to come away from, or
Yeah.
in order to bring about another kind of experience, I would choose. So with the preferring, it's just kind of, you know, what would it be like to actually want to be somewhere else, to feel inclined to be somewhere else, to notice, oh yeah, I've been captured a bit. Now I'm coming back to a place that I'd rather be, as it were. Gently, 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 gently. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I love the observation that you prompted there, which is that I think the choosing can be a doing rather than a being. Yeah. Michelle, can I say more about interdependence? It's a big topic for 2 minutes, but it's just the notion that gosh, let me read you something. Maybe it might work. So this is something I've just wrote the other day. Sitting here in my garden studio in Cambridge, thoughts form in my mind. Along with these come nerve impulses that cause my arms and fingers to move, depressing keys on a keyboard. My thoughts appear on a computer screen in front of me. A host of further processes are going to follow. X, I'm not naming any names, and I will exchange and revise drafts over and over. I'll contact publishers, contracts will be exchanged, manuscripts delivered, editing will happen, proofs will be checked. There will be printing, audio recording, and ebook configuring. Distribution channels will activate, and then, amazingly, in your present moment, a few years from this moment in Cambridge, those same thoughts will appear in front of you. You and I will have linked up. To some extent, the experience I am having now in my present moment will shape the experience that is happening in your present moment, over who knows what spans of time and distance. My experience right now will connect, however tangentially, to your experience. You, me, and all the other readers of this will have connected in a web of shared experience that extends over time and space. A web of shared experience. That is one aspect of human consciousness, and it is a marvel. Right now, sitting here and gazing over the top of my computer screen, through the window beyond I see a huge cherry tree in our neighbour's gardens. Its green leaves stark against a clear blue sky. The wind rustles, and a fat wood pigeon lands clumsily on a thin branch, causing parts of the tree to bob and sway. It shimmers, a green living jewel. An uncountable array of events has enabled this experience to occur. Soil will have fed trees. Pigeon ancestors will have mated, foraged, nested, and brought up their young. Pressure systems in the North Atlantic will have caused wind to blow. Light, which left the sun just over 8 minutes ago, has struck branches and leaves and reflected onto my retina. Neurons fire in my brain, and from an infinite web of connected events, this particular moment of experience emerges. A wonder. To sense that wonder calls for a simple moment of presence, a capacity to let what is here be just what is here, right now, in all its completeness. Many of us will have touched that sense of wonder and completeness from time to time, but we rarely rest there. Wants, needs, and drives, our own and others, rise up and draw us into the agitated vortex of our daily lives. We find ourselves thrust over and over again into more constricted states of self-enclosure and self-concern. It doesn't need to be like that. That's what I'm driving at. Okay. And we're over time now, folks. So thank you. I hope that's been interesting.
Thank you very much, Michael. That's still your website, Mindfulness Works.
Oh, yeah.
I have put it in the chat for you to see.
Thank you.
And colleagues, I would like to draw your attention. Can you see this? Is that something, or is it a mirror?
It's working.
Yes.
Thank you.
For this theme, I think it's a totally inspiring book. It's your first one, I think. You wrote Mind Time Later and the other one. But for this theme, that's a wonderful book. So I would really, really recommend it. And thank you with that. If you have any resources that you want us to know, or any events that you are organizing, please don't be shy and let us know. For me, this was a wonderful experience. And I see in the chat gratitude coming up. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, folks. Lovely to be here. Stay well.
And
Thank you.
hope to be with you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.